Good day. Today we're going to talk about a few strategies or things you can do to get unstuck in your business. Good day. My name is Matthew Ewell from Leading with Nice, where we want to help you inspire others, build loyalty, and get results. Now, earlier on today, I was speaking with a colleague who said in their workplace they had just gotten to a place of not quite staleness, but the ball wasn't moving down the field to use a football analogy, in the same way it had been in the past. And they had all the same great people. They loved their employees, but there was just like, and I couldn't believe it, like a fatigue about new ideas or new ways to do things, or how to get, how to help our team reach their full potential. So I want to introduce to you just a thought that I shared today with my friend that might work for you. Now, I want to talk about the idea of being a professional amateur. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, because it's a professional amateur, aren't those antonyms? And the word amateur, and I don't put a whole lot of stock in like what words originally meant or whatnot. Like literally, I'm speaking about literally here. Like that word has changed, obviously, the meaning. And so I don't get mad at people when they say, I literally died. And I'm like, well, you're still here. I don't do that kind of thing. But amateur, the Latin root actually speak about the pursuit of something that you adore, and not so much hyper specialization from your professional aspect, but if you loved horses, like drawing them, collecting horse figurines, reading about them, learning all you could about them, the way you might a hobby, for example. So my tip is this: if you're stuck in the workplace, start exploring how you and your colleagues, where you are a professional amateur. And this idea is really about going laterally, right? Not about going up or down a vertical. Like, how can we build further into your specialization? How can we take somebody who may not be a big part of the creative conversation or the problem solving conversation? How can we lift them up? Now, I'm not suggesting you ignore that opportunity, obviously, but something you can do with the same people doing the same sort of work, and to spur on that, to get that unstuckness, to move the ball down the field, is having a conversation, very intentional. And often it's great if you have a facilitator leading this, so everybody can participate equally and be creative and daydream and imagine. What do we do outside of the walls, whether they be virtual or real office, that is our professional hobby? What do we do that is fun? And the reason why we want to have these conversations is not just a touchy-feely, get-to-know-you exercise. No, this will help build trust in your organization as well, but that's a side benefit to this exercise. The reason we want to do that is there's lots of scientific data that shows the greatest achievements happen when the newest information is introduced. So where this has happened as a society is in Japan, when there have been the most awards and breakthroughs in literature, poetry, science in Japan, is directly after they've had the greatest time of immigration. And if you know anything about Japan, it's typically a very closed country where it's hard for outsiders to gain any traction or momentum. But Japan has seen the most improvement in its country in science, technology, poetry, etc., after they've had a big influx of immigration. So what does that tell you about your work? How do you take that information and use it in your workplace? You ask your colleagues about what do they like to do as a hobby? What other experiences have they had that might contribute? And why you want to do that is so that you collectively can be aware of this and maybe start using that information. A good example is on a communications project we were working on, somebody who had moved into doing a client-based account role where they were just dealing one-on-one. They had previously worked in fundraising. And so when we learned that, we all of a sudden had a new person that we could say, hey, what do you think of this messaging? They had spent their whole career up until this point where they had come to do some client-based accounting work, talking about great messaging and a way to draw somebody into the story. We didn't know that before, but all of a sudden it added another person to help feed into that creativity. And they hadn't volunteered that information because, quite frankly, they're doing their job and they didn't know that this team might need some help, right? But now it gave that team the opportunity to reach somebody else. I think of myself personally. I worked at McDonald's as a teenager. I loved it. It was a great job. Taught me a lot about process. Taught me a lot about how if I'm taught to do something well, I can be successful. Built a lot of my confidence. But, I was held up at McDonald's. I was working drive-through and somebody came and had a weapon and robbed McDonald's, when I was working. And so what that actually has given me is resilience in difficult situations. Now, if I don't share those kinds of stories, who's going to know that I might be a resource for resiliency? Now, I'm not saying there's a direct connection one-to-one, like, oh, you were held up as a teenager and now you're resilient. What I'm saying is that, fed into a lot of different arenas that influenced how I am today, right? So, I'd love for you to use this. I'd love to talk to you more about how you could implement conversations around thinking laterally and discovering what your colleagues do as a professional amateur. What do they adore? What do they really, what have they fed into? What is fed into their lives? There's a lot of great stuff there to learn. For example, Leading with Nice, we have 2 musicians that are on staff. And so when we're working with arts organizations or dealing with very highly creative people, I can draw on those 2 staff members to say, okay, what kind of process do you think they're going through? How would this be interpreted? It has nothing to do with their jobs being a musician here at Leading with Nice, but it's so helpful that I can draw on their knowledge, on what they do for the love, the pursuit of something they adore. And it's just so helpful. So if you'd like to learn more about how you could do this, or have a time or times when you have these conversations at work, so it's not like a weird, like, oh, why are we talking about all this personal stuff all of a sudden, and then back to TPS reports. You don't want it that way. Reach out, email us, visit us at leadingwithnice.com. We'd love to chat with you more about this, or just you can take this tip and run with it on your own. It's for you to have. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.